Now you can ask.
Okay.
Can she?
Go
Does
ahead.
anyone know about a movie that has to do with October 7th? That
No.
was, what's the woman's name?
Last name was Sandberg, and she used to work for Facebook.
Sandberg.
Sandberg, when she with,
The HP president.
Yeah.
CEO. What is her first name?
Cheryl, Larry said.
Cheryl
Major.
Sandberg.
yeah, you're
I
right.
heard there was something about her, but I didn't think it had to do with
There's a
October
movie
7th.
having to
The
do
rabbi
with
might
what
know.
Hamas did.
Yeah, she came out with a movie about October
That's-
7th.
That's
Right, that's what I'm
she said.
trying to find out. Does
Where
it,
do you
how do you, where do you see it or where can you stream it?
Oh,
Do you have that information?
no, but
Gonna
I saw
Google.
the articles about her movie.
What is going on?
Sheryl Sandberg movie about October 7th.
Screams Before Silence. According to the Times of Israel, following a world premiere in New York on Thursday, Screams Before Silence, former Meta Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg's new documentary on the systematic sexual violence perpetrated by Hamas against Israelis on October 7th, is now available for open access online viewing.
But doesn't
So I
say
guess you
where to find it.
Well, I guess you would just, what is the name of the movie? Screams Before Silence? Is that what it says?
Yeah, you can go to screamsbeforesilence.com and they have their website and you can watch the full film there.
Oh, wow.
Hey,
Oh yeah, I guess it's available free on their website
Okay, so let me write
Thank
it
you.
down.
because I guess unlike
Screams Before
unlike,
Silence.
unlike a small-time director who's trying to make some money from a low-budget film, Sheryl Sandberg's got, she's doing this to get the publicity out about what really happened. So
Good.
she wants people to watch it. So you just go to screamsbeforesilence.com and you hit accept, and then up comes watch full movie.
Hmm.
And you're all set.
Okay.
So if
Thank
you do it, I guess you can do it on your computer or on your
Sure you
phone or
can.
something like that, so that
Yep.
you
Yep.
get a bigger screen.
Screams of.
Yeah, we see
screams.
that. Yeah, okay.
Screams Before Silence.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this a picture of doom behind you, Richard?
Yeah, because I ate some bread during
He
Passover.
wants to wait.
And I ate with a lot of lightning and
Period. Can you
no.
call her and discuss? Question mark.
if we don't know, and if we don't become holy, this is what happens.
That's what happens, okay.
All right,
Rather
let's
than
go ahead and start with the blessing and then we can start with discussion.
Okay.
Together. Baruch atah Adonai
Aye.
Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lazot divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the world, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to engage in the words of Torah. Amen. Okay, Rabbi, she's all yours.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let me see. I have to try to adjust my screen here. View.
Sai is joining us. Hi, Sai.
Hi, Sai.
They said hi.
We are on page. We're on page.
everybody.
We're on page 132, Perek Bet, defining holiness in Jewish tradition. This is Parshat Kedoshim. So Kedoshim is one of the most important parshas in the Torah. So and it Kedoshim means holiness. And so, the goal of Judaism is holiness. The goal of Judaism is to be a better person, whatever that means. And that's what we're trying to come up with today. And why are you laughing, Sai?
I love when you say whatever that means. That opens up a whole book.
No,
Yes, well, unlike my Orthodox friends, I'm not.
wait one second, wait
I'm
one
not-
second. Let me get out of the.
I'm
Okay.
not as convinced. I'm not as sure what things mean as
Yeah.
they are.
That's good, and that's good.
What it meant at the time, what it meant in the Second Temple period, what it meant in the medieval period, what it means today. All these things may be different. So I lack certitude, Sai. I just don't know. But I'm trying. Okay, opening comments. And this Friday, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to talk about anything related to this because we're commemorating Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, and we're having 6 candle lighters who are going to each light a candle in memory of the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust. We have I think 5 children of Holocaust survivors, and the kids in the religious school, or a kid from the religious school, will light on behalf of the 1.5 million children that were murdered. And I don't really look at Facebook much, but I did the other day, and somehow I've subscribed to a organization that I forget exactly if it's Holocaust Awareness or Holocaust Museum somewhere, but they every day they seem to put in a picture of somebody who was in a concentration camp, and it's very sad because you can actually see a photo of them before the war. So yeah, there was one little French kid, dressed up fancy, probably from 39 or something like that. And there was this guy from Holland, and the Jewish ones always died, because they had different policies. So if you weren't Jewish and you were put in there for political activities or something, you had a much higher, chance of survival. So sometimes the Poles who were put there, or other people who were communists or something, and then they say, liberated in 1945. But we hear a lot about Holocaust survivors, but there were very, very few. Also, at the end of the war, they did the death marches. So they marched all the remaining prisoners in most of the camps back into Germany. And it sounds like that should be easy to escape, right? Because it's like literally in the last weeks of the war. And why would the guards care at that point? And it's in the chaos and everything, but somehow they ran those marches so well from their point of view that anyone who tried to run off of the track and run toward the woods or something, they shot almost 95%, they killed. So you had no choice but to keep walking in the freezing cold. This is like in January 45, and you might not even have shoes and stuff. And people literally just froze to death or died of hunger or whatever. So it was really, really catastrophic, even in the last weeks of the war. And I'm listening, sorry to get off on this, but I'm listening to audible book on Audible, 1946. Just about the year 1946, but I happen to be in the section about Germany after the war, and almost nobody was punished. And the people that were punished extremely laxly. One guy who ran this company that was responsible for the death of hundreds of slave laborers, mostly Jewish, got 2 years in prison. And that was like regarded by the prosecutors as a successful prosecution. Almost everybody was downgraded. So people who were really serious, there were 8 million members of the Nazi Party. So, you know, it would seem that those 8 million should have been put in prison for life. And of those 8 million Nazi Party members, you know, the numbers who were punished at all was very small. I mean, we hear about the Nuremberg trials and how they hung a handful of leaders, but that was most of it. You know, now that there were extenuating circumstances, you know, they were trying to get Germany back up on its feet as a pro-Western country, West Germany.
Gonna check the inside right now.
Okay, go ahead.
And then I'll check
Let
the
me turn on the lights here.
And then you know, and that was more concerned than punishing Nazis for a war that had already ended. And so, you know, it's a very complicated thing. But anyway, that's a long answer why we're not going to talk about this on Friday night. So this is our opportunity to talk about holiness now. But it's a reminder that in this world, holiness is not just an abstract concept that, you know, that the lack of holiness can lead to some very, very bad things. Okay, that's my opening, a little bit of a rant, but nevertheless my opening. If anyone else would like to respond, maybe Pam or Marcia or Richard or
No.
Cy. Yes, Richard, and then Pam.
We can't hear you.
You have to unmute. Sorry, Richard, I had to unmute you.
Okay, there we go. My name, Richard Bass, Raful Moisha. I'm named after two uncles who were killed in the Holocaust. Back when I was born, 1945, my mother named me after two of her uncles who died.
Wow.
So every time I hear about it, it's very poignant for me to know that the people I did died horribly.
Wow.
And this is your mother's uncles.
Right, to my two of mother's uncles, yeah, Raful and Moisha. And I remember as a kid, I didn't want to be called Raful, you know, Raful. So I said, call me Moisha. So I was Raful Moisha, but I just was Moisha. I always was known as Moses Moisha.
Okay, Raful is from Raphael.
Yeah, God, yeah, angel, Moses the angel.
Raphael. So it's not Raful, it's Raful is like the Yiddish of
Well,
Raphael.
that's called, I guess for short, they call them, well, you know, this is what they called them, you know, that's what they called me, but they didn't call me, they called me Richard. Very far did they call me Moishe, except in Hebrew school.
So did that make you determined to be a better person?
You know, I'm not sure. It made me sad about what happened. It made me contemplate, and so maybe in that respect, it made me feel more, you know, more sensitive to prejudice. And in fact, today, as I was leaving, one of the exercise people who I don't know her name, she's an elderly person, probably maybe in the early 70s. She knows I'm Jewish, and she said she thinks it's horrible what's happening on the campuses today.
Okay.
And I agreed with her. So I said, well, there's some people who truly, you know, feel like I do about these things are horrible.
Pam.
Well, my thing is, I think we just have to continually remind people about the Holocaust, because I think young people, a lot of people forget about it, and we can't let them forget. It was just, you know, too important.
And the people who are Holocaust deniers throw that in there and cast doubt in other people's minds who don't know any better.
Right. And I find that so frustrating that they do that.
Well, and unfortunately, this morning there's an article about the Colombia protest leader who negotiated for food for the protesters, Joanna Slutsky. So obviously a Jewish sounding name. And she's one of the leaders of this pro-Gazan anti-Israel organization. And she's demanding that Colombia feed them. she said, you don't want your students to die of starvation while we're
Yeah.
protesting.
Uh,
I don't care. They're not
So,
gonna die. of starvation.
That
but
request
it's-
is chutzpah.
Yeah.
I saw
Good point.
an English professor yesterday. Her last name was Hirsch. It's Jennifer. I don't remember the first name. She was probably in her 50s, 60s, I guess. And she was the pro Gaza protesters. And I thought, what is the matter with you, lady? Because with a name like Hirsch, the odds were that she was Jewish also. If there's a liberal cause, Jewish people seem to, or what they think is a liberal cause, we're going to defend the world, not thinking about what they're defending. It's very frustrating.
So it's very sad that way. Other comments? I guess we should start on page
Yes.
132. I'm trying to mix two things up, the
Yeah.
Holocaust and holiness, which don't necessarily go together organically. But I just one more comment about that. I think after the Holocaust, the few survivors there were, some of them, were aspiring to, to redeem the situation to the extent possible, but becoming as holy as possible. Others felt there's obviously no ethics or morals in the world, and I should be as bad as I can. So I think you can have very extreme conclusions having experienced something like that. You can come out determined to become very good or determined to be very bad. You can imagine somebody who's gone through that and seen such people behave so well, that's all they know. And they think, well, I should be, like that as much as I can to get ahead in the world. So very hard situation. And then, of course, a lot of Holocaust survivors, were emotionally suffering, and I had a girlfriend in college whose mother was a Hungarian Holocaust survivor who was slowly going crazy, I don't, from her experiences in the Holocaust, which were brief but horrific. Yes, Marcia, did you sigh?
It's interesting that there were so many Jews killed outside of the Holocaust in Europe. Now, my grandfather on my father's side and my uncles who did not come over to this country were all killed by the Germans when they attacked Russia.
Oh, okay, yes.
And they didn't have to be caught up in the Holocaust. As they were Jewish, and the Germans knew you were Jewish when they attacked Russia, they killed you, period.
Yeah, I mean, we count that as part of the Holocaust. No? But yeah, there's something like a couple million Jews who were machine gunned to death in Eastern Europe, right? Yeah, it's all so unbelievably sad and so unbelievable, and it happened so recently, and it's, as you said, Pam, it's mostly forgotten already. Okay, page 132. Who would like to read? Now that I've succeeded in depressing everyone. Okay, Minya.
You have to unmute, Minya. Sorry.
I thought I was, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Defining holiness in Jewish tradition. Parshat Kedoshim begins with God's command to the Jewish people. You shall be holy, Kedoshim, for I, the Lord your God, am holy, Kadosh. Many Torah interpreters ask what such a commandment means. Does it have to do with a special state of ritual purity? Since it is stated in the midst of a description of rituals associated with the ancient sanctuary, can it have to do with being qualified to enter the sanctuary? Is the commandment to be holy possible or practical? Is it realistic to expect a human being to be holy as God is holy? Three of the oldest interpretations of the commandment to be holy provide some valuable answers to such questions. Rabbi Haya, who lived in Israel during the 3rd century, stresses that Moses was told to present the commandment, quote, "You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy," to, quote, "the whole Israelite community." The commandment was given not to a few pious priests or individuals, but rather to the entire community. Achieving this state of holiness, therefore, is not something done by one person or a small group of persons, but rather by the whole people. Rabbi Levi, who taught with Rabbi Haya, emphasizes that the commandments to be holy and the section of the Torah following it were presented directly to the people because the 10 commandments are contained in it. Rabbi Levi may be hinting that the way to holiness is through observance of all the commandments listed in this section of Torah, seeing a parallel between the contents of the 10 commandments given to Moses on Mount Sinai and the mitzvot presented in these chapters of Leviticus. Levi concludes that God not only commanded the people to be holy, but stressed the particular moral way of life that would demonstrate that they were a distinct people.
Okay. Comments? Richard.
Yeah,
Richard
thank you.
and Marcia.
There you
Moshe.
go.
No,
Marcia.
Raful. I guess that's Yiddish, Raful, right? Raphael, whatever.
Raphael.
Anyway, it seems to me what he's saying is the Jews should separate themselves from the rest of the world. And this is Rabbi Haya and Levi were basically 1st century BC, was it?
Maybe a little later, but
Or
roughly,
was
yeah.
it before the
3rd century.
Was it before the destruction of the temple? I'm not sure.
Oh, 3rd century, so it would be 200 years after the
Oh, I have
destruction.
20
Right,
years
right.
after the destruction of the temple. Yeah, 3rd century. So they're trying to say, it seems to me, in order to be holy and to be Jewish, you have to be separate from others.
Uh-huh.
You have to live a separate life. We, of course, in America, don't see that. Even the Hasidic, do mingle with it within the society to work.
Well, it's one thing to mingle business-wise, and it's another thing to just totally assimilate, right?
Right.
So I guess here they're more on the extreme side. I mean, about the Essenes. This is in the time of the Second Temple, but they went off to the Dead Sea to live in an isolated community. And then later, the Christians, some of them did the same thing. They went off into the desert. There was one Christian monk who went off into the Egyptian desert completely by himself for like years. So there's the idea that to be religious means to isolate from society completely. But most of us don't want to do that. Marcia and then Sai.
So basically the removal from society, I guess the temptations of society keep people from being holy is what they're saying. But I agree, what I initially was going to say was in agreement with what Richard was saying, was to separate themselves from other people in their behavior, which would make them a more cohesive group. It would make the Jews, look at to themselves, they could say. Unfortunately, it comes across to other people, not that more as we're better than you, but their behavior to themselves, say to the others, that to themselves, that they're special in their adherence to God's will and God's practices. And I think that specialness is probably a lot of what caused problems over the years, you know. That when you think that you're a separate group, you know, or better than other people in your behavior, you know, I don't know.
But if you don't separate and you watch TV even a little bit, you're inundated with all these materialistic values. Everything is buy this, buy that, buy more clothes. I mean, in some of these poor countries, I was watching a video last week on North Korea. It looks like the North Koreans, they've got like 2 shirts and 2 pairs of pants, and that's it. And they don't have a Saks Fifth Avenue, and they don't have a TJ Maxx, and they don't have a Goodwill. They don't have anything where they can buy clothes at the upper end or the middle end or the lower end. There's nothing, you know, and the government doesn't tell them buy stuff. Quite the contrary. But in America, everything is about buy clothes, buy a new car, buy this, you know, and it's not just they want you to give them your money, but it creates a certain mentality. Everything's about acquisition, everything is about materialism, and that seems to me to be completely incompatible with holiness. Says the man with more shirts than I can use.
Cy has his hand up.
Cy.
I would like to get back to the word holy. What does it mean? How are we defining it? You know, what is holy and what's not holy? For example, is the Constitution of the United States holy? Why is that more or less holy than anything else that we think is holy? Does it have to be a religious thing to be holy?
Well, in the next
That's what I'm
paragraph,
about a discussion.
in the next paragraph, they're going to define holiness as separateness.
Oh, there we go.
You can
Separate from what?
isolate people separate from the corruptions of general society, from materialism.
Oh, I think you're reading in something into that.
You just don't want to join me in this isolated community that I want to build in the desert.
I'm not buying
In
that.
the desert, so you don't have to go far, so.
Well, we want to get away from materialism, so that you have to be at least 50 miles away from the nearest Bloomingdale's.
Yeah, but
Not
materialism,
hard either around here.
materialism is a great thing. It's made us a great people. Made us supposedly the best society in the world because we are materialistic.
Minya,
Yes.
are you ready to separate in order to become holy?
No, because I believe that holy is something that is within you. It's not something that you walk around and people can see unless it's by your actions. But holy to me is more than just materialism.
But here the stress is, at least as Harvey Fields presents it, that holiness is something you do as a group. So it's not according to this definition, nobody's going to look inside the individual. It's about creating a holy nation, not creating a holy individual. So we're not really talking here about what might make a person spirit. I'm doing, by the way, another course in June on personal spirituality. That's going to be based on the book I wrote in Alabama, and I'm planning to publish it soon. But that's about personal spirituality. But it seems here that Harvey Fields is saying that right now God is saying to the Jewish people, you, plural, as a people, should be holy. So therefore, Minya, what your definition of what might make you individually holy is irrelevant. We're trying to create and maybe it's a completely different thing than individual holiness, but we're trying to create group holiness, and we're trying to create that by separating the group from other groups.
What about I don't remember his name, the guy who got everybody who was following him and believing him to drink spiked Kool-Aid.
Jones, was that his name?
Jones
Yeah.
in
And there,
Texas.
there you have a whole group who believed that they were holy because of what they were told.
Right.
And they believed everything he said. So that's an example of your group being holy. But even
they
within
knew-
a group, even
They
within a
knew
group,
that they knew there was poison in the Kool-Aid, right?
I don't know that, but I know that they all drank it willingly because they were told to.
Oh, it was like that group in Rancho Santa Fe outside of San Diego that were gonna get spirited up to the God, I don't know, to the heavens. Yeah.
With a spaceship. Well, how do you know they didn't?
I think they found the bodies. Well, maybe their souls got spaceshipped. I don't know.
Right. No, they're not. They plan to leave their bodies behind.
Oh, okay.
You see, Marsha's just not a believer. But here we're talking about the group. So does that mean anything to people here? I mean, Richard, can you see the mentality where God is talking to Moses and saying, I want you to make the Jewish people a holy people? I mean, in our synagogue, we join as individuals because each of us wants to join a synagogue, right? We're not really a group. We become a voluntary group, but it's very different than the old days where there was such a thing as the Jewish community. Here it's voluntary. It's just 1 or 2%. So we're very individualistic focused. And if all my sermons at the synagogue focus on the group, individuals will stop to feel that this is meaningful, and some of them will drop out, I would presume. Marcia.
Well, they were living in basically ghettos, even as they moved, if they were moving through the desert, which you're making me wonder about. But if they were moving as a Jewish group. They get into whatever town or city they eventually get into, they're still going to stay within their little, they keep them, so what are those, what is the word for it? Cartels? What is it? That they little some circumscribed groups are in a town so that they're living amongst themselves. They're not even except to maybe trading or something of that sort. They don't really interact with other people who are not Jewish. So it was a lot easier at that point to separate yourself as a people. It's almost impossible nowadays, even if you wanted to.
So there's no way. So a group, but some groups are successful at that, right? There still are
like
groups,
the Amish or something like that.
right? So you see that in some sociology of religion, you would think the Amish would be antiquated, right? The way that they practice their lives, they don't use cars, right? They don't have TVs. They don't use computers. They don't believe in any modern technology. That all the Amish would get up and say, this is not going to meet my individual needs. I'm resigning as an Amish. I'm going to become a Jew or something where I can watch TV. But they don't, right? And in fact, they have this thing at the end of high school where they let them run wild for a year or two, and most of them come back. So how do you explain that?
What's the name of that? What they call, there's a name for what they allowed to do that. Do you remember what it was?
I can Google it for you. I know everything now.
There is a group that comes down.
What is it called when the Amish run wild for a year after high school?
Run wild.
There's a group that comes down from Wickenburg.
It's called Rumspringa. Rumspringa.
What?
Rumspringa. Rumspringa. Rumspringa normally begins at age 16 and ends when a youth chooses either to be baptized in the Amish church or to leave the community.
You can't stay in the community if you don't follow the rules exactly.
Right.
And I would assume that's probably similar to the Hasidic Jews who you know if they go into the wide world, they become doctors, say they can't be Hasidic anymore. We had a Jewish a doctor. In fact, she's now in pediatric fellowship at from SIU, who came from New York, and she was from a large Hasidic family of 13. And her husband, who she married, also was from a Hasidic family in England of 12 or 13. And they both no longer were part of the Hasidic group because one was a computer specialist and the other was a doctor. And so they did not follow the sect. Although eventually, at least for the one who was Hannah, her father reaccepted her, but told her she can't come and stay in their house, because she was no longer Hasidic. But he recognized her and recognized when she had a baby, and they got married in the Hasidic temple. I remember Hasidic group because I know I went to their wedding. Their second wedding, actually. They had a civil wedding first. So I guess Hasidic is the same way as the Amish.
I had,
And every religious group like that
It's something like that.
will have similar rules, because in order to be holy, they have to maintain a significant degree of separation as a community from the outside world. So holiness here doesn't have anything to do, or very little to do, with the personal holiness that Minya was speaking about 5 or 10 minutes ago. It's something different. It's much more communal. It's communal preservation. And I have, how do we end up with a leader of the anti-Israel protesters, coming from a Jewish background? Obviously, there was something went wrong. And if it was just one, there's always one. But unfortunately, I think we're talking about a large group. So we're the way we're doing it has some very serious problems. So we're not maintaining this communal holiness, which means division of some sort. Yes, sorry, Marcia.
so as recently as when I was growing up, it was a real problem if a child married out of the religion. And I'm sure all of us have gone through the acceptance of the family to this happening. If you wanted to marry, I mean, I remember in the town I was living in Massachusetts, one of my neighbors, when his daughter was marrying out of the religion, he walked down the streets of the nearby town, the business part of town, with a black band on his arm, saying basically in mourning that he was considering her dead because she was marrying out of her religion. And that was in the
Who was this?
this was in Massachusetts when I was living up in the Concord, Mass area, just outside of Boston. I mean, it was not that long ago. I would say that was probably they probably got married in the early 60s, I would think, from what I
Wow.
and
Wow.
and people were still, and he was not a Hasidic Jew, maybe conservative at max, and people were doing that.
But the problem was the structures of the community were not composed correctly. So that sort of thing was inevitable.
Well, inevitably it wasn't going to be successful, to try to do that. I can't imagine, is there anybody here where their kids haven't married out of somebody in their family, one of their children didn't marry out of their religion? I mean, mine did. I don't know. And when I talk to other people, pretty much it is the case, that they did. So, it's really hard, what are you gonna do? Disown your child like that man did? That's terrible, and so then you lose the oneness of the community, the solidity of the community,
Well, that was when I was growing up, that was my puzzlement, is that it seemed to me that American Judaism, outside of the Orthodox, was structured in a way that it would inevitably fail, that there was not sufficient communal barriers, that things were too amorphous and permeable. And therefore, I didn't understand how the leaders were talking so optimistically about the Jewish future in America. I thought, unless they change the structure, everything is inevitably going to crash down. But the leaders kept saying positive things over and over. Every decade they continued to be positive, and all the sociologists of Judaism in America, most of them, they came up, the Jewish population is increasing, everything's great. And in my books, I would always put a positive ending on it because everybody else was so positive. I didn't want to sound like grumpy, but I didn't understand it. And now I still don't understand it. And some of these leaders are still acting like optimistic, but without the proper, but it wasn't that the Jews in America were not, intelligent or serious. It's that the structures were not in place. So, what makes the Amish successful and Reform Jews not successful? It's about the structures. You have to have a community that has mechanisms for isolation in some form. Yes, Sai.
You said something that really bothers me. You said that the Amish are successful and the Jewish communities are not successful, whether it be Reformed or Orthodox. And that
No, I
disturbs me.
said the non-Orthodox.
Well, that kind of disturbs me. What you're saying, that you expect people to conform, that because of family background or tradition, they should be part of something. You're taking away their ability to be who they want to be
Right.
themselves.
Well,
And how do you account for that?
yes, so you're making a very good point, Sai. So that's why we're Reform. We want everybody to have the right to think themselves and make their own decisions without any artificial barriers, where you say, if you cross that line, we're going to zap you or you're out of here. And so, but the problem is you can't have both in a Western society. So either you build barriers like the ultra Orthodox groups or the Amish, or you don't. And if you don't, then you have the situation that we have. So we've made our choice. Of course, there's the third option, which is Israel, where you can have a society that's large enough to be internally open, but because it's a Jewish country, you have an exterior boundary. And so that would be another option. Because remember, you're worried about the collective, not the individual. So it's not that in Israel, anyone in Israel can go off to Denmark and marry a Danish girl. And when I traveled Denmark during college, every little town had an Israeli married to a Danish girl. But as a group, you're maintaining these boundaries. And so the Israeli people are separate enough. Yes, Marcia.
What is the consideration of having a lot of non-Jews in the Israeli government nowadays?
A lot of non-Jews.
There's a lot of Arab people that are in the Knesset, aren't there? At this
well, there's 20% of the country's Arab, and they elect Arab representatives. But and if you're Orthodox, that bothers you, that they're non-Jews, because you want really an entirely Jewish country. But it's the best you can do under the circumstances from that point of view. I guess what I'm pointing out is that what Sai is saying is very correct, that we want to have the individualism. This is important to us, that Shirley or Steve or Richard decides that they want to study whatever, or they want to go and live in a, socialist community, or they want to study Nietzsche, or they want to learn Finnish, or they want to marry whoever they want to marry. We want that right, and we want to encourage people to be individuals. On the other hand, this idea of holiness is what I think one of the main reasons is to preserve the integrity of the group.
Right.
So you can't have both. You can't have both. You can't say we're going to emphasize the integrity of the group, and we're going to encourage each individual to find their inspiration. So this Joanna Slutsky, her inspiration is to be a radical, an anarchist, and a anti-Israel activist. This is what she spent many years figuring out what was important to her, and that's what she came up with. Who am I to say that this is where she finds meaning? What am I going to tell her? Just, marry and move into the Jewish community and shut your mouth and just send your kids to Jewish school and do what we tell you. So there's these two opposite approaches, and you can and so your friend who went around with the black band on his arm, he wanted both.
Right.
He wanted personally to make his own decisions in life and let his kids make his own decisions in life. But when they did that, he was horrified because they didn't make decisions he wanted them to make. But didn't he realize that it was unlikely that they were going to make decisions that he would like? I mean, didn't he? It sounds like he was caught completely off guard. And that's a long time ago, the 60s. He just didn't realize that they were likely to make choices like that. And in the 20, 30 years after that, most of his younger contemporaries' children made the same choice. So it wasn't a bizarre choice.
Right.
His son or daughter might have decided to move to the Soviet Union, become a communist, or move to Nepal and become a Buddhist monk, or something weird. But marrying a non-Jew was only early. It was in the early 60s. It was unusual then. The intermarriage rate was probably about 5 or 6% at that time. But if it had been 25 years later, it would have been 40%. So it was just that it was 25 years ahead of its time. But anyway, Donna.
Yeah, when I was there, we did have some Arabs in the Knesset. Very few. I think I'm looking at maybe 2 or 3, something like that. And there was a rule in the Knesset that if a member of the Knesset that was Jewish, but any member of the Knesset that visited or went to an Arab country was automatically out of the Knesset.
Really?
Now, the Arabs, they would visit these Arab countries, and there was quite an upheaval in the country because they said they should not be able to visit because they are a member of the Jewish Knesset, of the Israeli Jewish Knesset. And so there was quite an upheaval. I don't know that anything ever came of it or was solved. But of course, people were just as against even having an Arab, because by the fact that they were Arabs, they were against the country. And so how can you have a government that has people in the government that are against it? And so there's always been that friction there that's really caused a lot of upheavals.
Okay, well, that's the way it was. And you think it's different now, Donna?
I don't know. I left there 5 years ago, so I haven't heard anything different about that, that they still have some Arabs in the Knesset.
There's more and
Okay.
more.
Shirley, Steve, Cy, Minya.
Well, you can be like my mother and be raised as an Orthodox Jew and marry a Tennessee hillbilly farmer
And why did
and be
she do
married for
that?
60
Why did she do Why did she do that?
years. My dad said he was drunk, but they didn't drink, so I don't know. Because they fell in love, and they were married for 69 years.
And wanted
How-
fresh vegetables.
Happily married.
Happily, well, they had problems. I'm sure they had probably more than other people did because they were so different. It wasn't just different religions; it was different lifestyles. It was different everything. But they made it work because people
Opposites attract.
didn't just walk out of a marriage. Then they
Right.
worked it out.
True.
Yeah, Steve.
Quick
Steve.
question, Shirley, did the family accept your family, did they accept the situation?
They accepted my dad, who was the farmer, and loved him dearly, but they wouldn't talk to my mother because she's the one that hurt him. My dad didn't hurt him. But eventually, when I was born, babies have a way of bringing people together. Something about being a baby, and my mother went in to greet me, to take care of me, and my grandfather walked in at the same time, and they kind of embraced over this and got back together again.
Happy ending.
But they didn't. My grandparents did not accept my mother for 2.5 years till I was born.
Cy.
Well, for the record, whether you know it or not, I'm married to a Gentile lady, and we've been married now 25 years, and it's the happiest marriage I've ever had. Period.
How many marriages have you had? Cy, how many marriages have you had?
Well, this is my second marriage.
Me too.
That's nothing. I mean, I've had congregants had 6 or 7 marriages.
No, I don't want 6 or 7. I'm happy here.
Yes, Pam.
Are you exaggerating about the 6 or 7?
Well, it was 6.
Wow. I
In
mean,
Australia, one guy, he said to me, this is a long time ago, as a student rabbi, said to me, he said, my wife is not my first wife. I said, yeah, no, I know, it's your second. He smiled, he said, no, she's my 6th. But they'd been married also, I think, 25 years or so, so it wasn't.
Finally kept.
Wow.
It took 6 times to get it right.
did you tell them, sometimes you can just date if you want?
Right.
Some people are, they don't want to date, they want to be married.
Exactly.
All right, Richard.
To change the subject just a tiny bit, Donna, I just looked up Knesset. There's presently 10 or 11 Arab members in the Knesset.
Out of how
Out
many?
of 120.
And one of them, I think, is actually in one of the Israeli parties. And one of them may be in the in not just in parliament, but as a member of the government. Which is interesting. This is a radical right government.
Well, you can see how the things we hear about in terms of the fights between the Israeli politicians usually focuses on what to do in Gaza, things like that. But really their view of what Israeli society should be is just dramatically different, right? So the couple of the more right-wing people, they probably don't want non-Jews in the country, or if they will accept them, it'll be very reluctantly, so they have different, they're going to go back to this parsha and they're going to say, we want to be holy. Holy means being separate. We came back to Israel because we don't want to live in Poland, or we don't want to live in America. We want to live separate. And that's the whole purpose of coming back to Israel. And then the more liberal people would say, no, we want Israel to be an enlightened Western country. Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism, thought of it as a very, would be a very enlightened Western country. I don't know that he even expected that the Israelis would speak Hebrew. And he certainly wanted, it to be high culture and basically an extension of a European country, the best of Europe kind of thing. So people have different views on what Israel should be.
And that's exactly what the Arabs feel, that the Europeans, the United Nations colonized an Arab land with Ashkenazi Jews, basically. And that's what they're angry about. They're saying this was our land. Of course, you could say, hey, Israel was a country for just close to 1,000 years until until 139 AD, when finally the Romans got sick and tired of all the revolts after Bar Kokhba, and I think that's when really all the Jews, except for a few, were forced out of Israel.
Correct.
So it wasn't like Israel was abandoned by the Jews voluntarily.
Right.
So that's an argument in favor of the Jews saying, hey, we were there for 1,000 years, but we were told to get out by the Romans. They don't exist anymore. We want to come back.
Correct. Yeah.
And
And
there were always non-Jews who were in Israel. There
right.
never was a country that was monolithic that had only Jews in it.
But again, it depends on what sources you're looking at. So
Right.
from a historical point of view, you are 100% correct. From a theological point of view, there were earlier thinkers who wanted Israel to be only a Jewish place.
Right.
And Jewish, that the way that they interpret Jewish, you can't just go there and be Jewish the way you want to be Jewish. You have to follow their rules, or else they'll throw you out. So, so even the people that might say, like even Marsh's friend from Boston, from Massachusetts, if he had gone to that sort of Israel and then wanted to set up his conservative synagogue, they'd say, no, you can't do that here. This is a Jewish country. He says, yeah, I know, I'm a conservative Jew. They said, no, you have to do it our way. And he said, no, I don't want to do that. I just came here because I don't want my children to marry non-Jews. And they said, well, tough luck. We set the rules here. Here's your plane ticket back to Massachusetts. Good luck. Get out of here. So when you have these barriers, you have people to enforce the barriers, and you don't have control over what happens. So we all say, oh, we'll accept barriers to be holy as a community and prevent our community from falling apart. But it can have unforeseen consequences, which is one of the many reasons why nobody wanted this sort of thing outside of the Orthodox and even in the modern Orthodox. But everything has ramifications. We're paying the price for our decisions now. Sai and then Donna.
I haven't been in Israel for 40 years, and I'm wondering if the Christian religion, Catholic or Protestants, are able to build a church in Israel.
Yeah, they can.
They can. Okay, that's good.
But for example, when the Mormons built their headquarters in Jerusalem 30 years ago or so, they got this very nice piece of land right overlooking the Mount of Olives, I believe, and they got permission from the Israeli government, but they had to agree to certain conditions. The main condition being that they would strictly no proselytizing among Jews in Israel. So whereas all over the world, Mormons go, like when I was in Jamaica, you'd see these guys in their white shirts and ties on bicycles, and they would spend 2 years in Jamaica trying to convert the locals. And the Jamaican government was okay with this. But in Israel, they said absolutely not. So that was the condition, and they followed that condition. So Mormons can come for a semester to study their kids from college, and adult Mormons can do a sabbatical at their center, but they can't make any attempts to convert people, Jews. I guess if they converted non-Jews, that would be okay. But I think the law is probably they just don't want them proselytizing anyone. So there are certain conditions that might be set, but you can build a church, yes. But I'm sure there are extremists who don't want this. And in fact, before the Gaza war, there was a couple of reports of Hasidic teenagers spitting at Christian tour people. So these Christians would be in very good faith, going around to Israel, and they wanted to see the ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods, and they're wearing crosses and something. And you'd have Hasidic teenager come over and spitting at them, because the Hasidic teenager's been raised in an educational system where he was taught about how the Christians, and specifically the Catholics, did such terrible things to us for many hundreds of years, in the Inquisition, for example. And they don't understand, well, the last 100 years, or at least since 1945, Christians and Jews have been friendlier, and many Christians have been much friendlier. So, and even if they're not, you still can't go around spitting at people, But anyway, they did.
Donna had hand up. Donna,
Donna, and then who else? Donna.
I will talk.
Donna, Marcia.
In the United States, there are many Jews that have dual citizenship with Israel, and they have to, if you're in Israel, you obey the laws of Israel. If you're in the United States, you obey the laws of the United States. If an American Jew is elected to government in Israel, they have to give up or an English Jew or whatever, they have to give up the other country's citizenship, and they do that in writing. And also, if you're an American Jew, say, with dual citizenship, you cannot vote in Israeli elections unless you've got your feet on the ground in Israel. There's no whatever.
Mail-in ballot.
Yeah, so you have to. You have to be there. So at election time, the influx of American Jewish Israelis to Israel is tremendous, because if they're on the land there, then they can vote. And so it's interesting. You see particularly in Jerusalem, so many more. Most of them are Orthodox Jews, and so it's interesting the different rules and regulations that countries have like that. I'm assuming that the United States would have the same type of a rule, that if you're
I think
have dual citizenship, that you have to give up the other country's citizenship.
But you're beginning to see the tremendous difference in attitudes between the ultra-Orthodox and the non-Orthodox in Israel in terms of this week's Parsha, this holiness idea, that this is a tremendous division. Okay, Marcia and then Pam.
Never mind me. I forgot what I was going to say already.
Okay, Pam and then Richard.
I think the tourism department probably came up with this idea that you had to come back to vote. You had to come back to Israel to vote.
Richard?
Oh, I just want to say, Donna, I didn't know that about Israel, about voting, because the United States, if you're a citizen, you can actually vote. I think absentee mail if you're not
Absentee.
if you're outside the country, but you're still a citizen and still a citizen of a particular state. But you have to be a citizen of a state in a community. That's what you have to.
Military does that.
Okay, let's keep reading. Minya, would you read?
Yes. The Sifra, a 4th century commentary on Leviticus, echoes Rabbi Levy's view. It interprets the word Kadoshim Tahayin, you shall be holy, as Perushim Teheyu, you shall be separate. Some scholars say this is a reference to the Pharisees, who were known by the Hebrew name Perushim, and who taught the Jews achieved holiness or a special status of honor by God, if they carefully observed all the commandments. Other interpreters argue that the authors of the Sifra mean to emphasize the unique responsibility of Jews to become a kingdom of priests and a Goy Kadosh, or holy nation. They believe that by living a Jewish life through carrying out the commandments of Torah, Jews were to be different from other nations, religions, and peoples. By interpreting the word Kedoshim as Perushim, the Sifra's authors contend that the words be holy mean be different, unique, separate from the ways of others, be distinct in your moral and ritual way of life.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the next paragraph continues this idea, so we should continue one more paragraph, but I wanted to just interject. So here, does anybody, you've all heard of the Pharisees? So the Pharisees were the group of rabbis in Second Temple period. Once the temple's destroyed, their name changes to the rabbis or the sages. How much the Perushim and the rabbis are the same or similar or not so similar, we don't really know. But the Perushim, one theory is that the Pharisees, which are in Hebrew Perushim, that this name comes from this idea to be separate. So that the Pharisees' basic point is you have to be holy, which means to be separate. And so you can see here that the entire religion, one interpretation that you could have is that the entire religion is based on this idea of being holy means to be separate. And so we're not following that. So so I'm setting up a community in the desert about 50 miles west of here that'll just be open to Reformed Jews.
Is that a quartz site?
That's, that is in the middle of nowhere.
How's that a quartz site?
Marcia.
I keep hearing in my head that a phrase that keeps coming up nowadays, Jews shall not replace us. And is it apparently Jewish people are viewed as being more of a cohesive group than non-Jews. And, you know, it's like we've identified ourselves as separate, I guess. And it is recognized by other people, I guess. And I don't agree with the crazy phrasing and all that, but it doesn't even make sense. You know, this little percentage of a country of people and, you know, are going to take over the whole country or something like that. But, you know, I guess we are as a people seen as being a cohesive group. Don't you think?
Well, certainly the neo-Nazis exaggerate the degree to which we're united. So they see us as all working together in the way that we would like to work together, but we don't. So that's the problem in that, you know, either they really believe that we're much more united than we are, or they're, you know, deliberately exaggerating it for their own purposes. But they believe that we're all in cahoots with one another and we all hire only each other and we all are trying to, you know, work for the betterment of our group and either as a result harming the white Protestants or either deliberately or just as a result of helping ourselves, we're hurting another group. Yes, Pam.
Is that a bad thing that they think that?
Well, in the neo-Nazi thinking, they see that we're taking over the country and we're going to completely. What was the expression, Marker? We
Jews
will
will not replace us.
that they see us as replacing them, and that they're going to end up with no jobs and no employment and no houses and nothing because the Jews are going to take everything. So it's not just that the percentage of Jewish lawyers will go up from 75% to 90%. That's a joke. Some neo-Nazi is going to get the hold of this tape. He said, we have a rabbi on tape saying that the Jews are trying to increase their percentage of the legal profession from 75 to 90%. Proof. But they believe it's an extreme thing and that we're trying to conspire among ourselves to squeeze them out of everything. So from their point of view, that's a catastrophic thing, that they have to stop us or else we'll destroy their lives.
Yeah, but as long as they respect us.
I don't think they do.
If you want a good, was it a lawyer, accountant, doctor, find somebody, one that's Jewish or something like that.
But it's a hard situation because it's not like what they're saying has some basis in Jewish theology and has some basis in American sociology. So it's not like they're completely crazy, but the conclusions that they draw from it are completely exaggerated. And the intent and the unity that they ascribe to us is just not there. So are they misreading a situation, or do they just hate Jews and then they're going about finding conspiracy because they hate us and they want to find a conspiracy? So that I don't know, but their thinking is exaggerated and malicious and and not true. Sai, Shirley, Min. Yes, Sai.
I recently, I don't know if you recall, Rabbi, but I recently sent you an article from American Military Magazine. I don't know if you can remember that. But in any event, this is a magazine that comes out and basically for the military. And this one issue spent a great deal of printing, if you will, on the Jews in the United States. And it was just a great, great article advising their readers how meaningful the Jews are in this country, all the things they've done, not only for the military, but for the country at large, how important they are and how respected they should be at all times. It was just a great article. So the point being that there are peoples here individually and groups who think highly of the Jews and respect the Jews and know who we are, as we do other religions and other nationalities. And of course,
Yes.
that's the way it should be.
This was from the Hoover Institute. This is from the Hoover Institute, Anti-Semitism and Cultural Suicide. We recognize that on a per capita basis, no group since the founding fathers has contributed more to our national success in multiple fields and endeavor than have American Jews, by Ralph Peters. Yeah, and it's a very interesting article and it fits our topic for today very, very well. Were we scrupulous, we'd recognize that on a per capita basis, no group since the founding fathers has contributed more to our national success. From science and medicine through finance, the legal system, and higher education, to the fine arts and popular culture, our stunning achievements over the last 100 years or so are unthinkable without our Jewish fellow citizens. Unshackled from the old world, the long constricted genius of Jews thrive with unmatched creativity and made the United States the alternative promised land. Therein lies the problem. Today's anti-Semitism is not about religion. Perhaps it never really was, not even in the Middle Ages. It's about jealousy, the rage of the self-wrought failure when faced with the success of those who work harder, smarter, and longer. If we no longer believe that witches and devils are to blame for our disappointments and losses, we're still in need of scapegoats. And Jews have always been on hand to take the rap credited with diabolical powers and plots, better explained by hard work and sound values. Anti-Semitism isn't just an idiotic form of societal self-destruction, it's intellectually lazy. Can we at least find somebody new to blame for our shortcomings? Excellent article, Cy. Thank you. Yes. And fits perfectly into this. So on one hand, we want to be separate so we can preserve our identity. We're not doing too well at that. On the other hand, the anti-Semites see us entering society as a threat, as a way that it undermines society. And this guy says, well, the Jews have contributed to society. They're not undermining society. They're contributing to it. They're helping us make it better. And comments? All right, Minya, would you keep reading?
Does this mean that Jews are to withdraw from the societies in which they live or from contact with people of other religions and national origins? Modern philosopher Martin Buber says no. He writes, Israel must, in imitating God by being a holy nation, similarly not withdraw from the world of the nations, but rather radiate a positive influence on them through every aspect of Jewish living. For Buber, being kadosh, or different, unique, does not mean retreating from contact with other religions and national groups. Instead, it's a special goal and responsibility. It means that the Jewish people must achieve an ethical and spiritual excellence that can enrich and influence all other peoples. Yet, what is the source of this positive influence? What may Buber mean by every aspect of Jewish living? Surveying the commandments clustered around the words, be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy, provides a significant answer. Taken together, they add up to a definition of holiness in Jewish tradition. Nearly every aspect of Jewish living is noted. Chapters 17 to 26 of Leviticus would have become known to biblical scholars as the Holiness Code, contain commandments that deal not only with the Sabbath, the festivals, and the different sacrifices to be offered at the sanctuary, but also include commandments regulating the moral life of the Jewish community. The list of ethical commandments encompasses nearly every aspect of human relationships. According to these commandments, Jewish morality forbids exposure of nakedness, incest, infidelity by husband or wife, idolatry or the worship of other gods, declaring false oaths, stealing, dealing deceitfully or falsely, defrauding another, retaining a worker's wage overnight, including the deaf, misleading the blind, rendering unfair decisions, favoring the poor in a dispute, showing partiality to the rich in a dispute, dealing dishonestly in business, profiting by taking advantage of others' misfortune, carrying grudges, spreading hatred, taking vengeance, practicing divination, soothsaying, or turning to ghosts and spirits. On the positive side, Jewish ethics command reverence for parents, leaving the corners of the field and some of the fruit of the vineyard for the poor and stranger, judging all people fairly, warning others who are about to commit a wrongdoing, and loving others as you love yourself.
Okay, stop. So obviously today I've chosen to emphasize this idea of holiness in a communal perspective. I do want to acknowledge, and we're seeing that starting here, that what we're probably mostly concerned with is holiness in a personal perspective, what Minya started to talk about. But I thought it would just be interesting to focus on the communal part today. Then we segued into discussions of anti-Semitism that meant that some anti-Semites, not all, see us as a threat because we work together. Even though we work together a lot less than what I say is necessary, we work together more than they feel is beneficial for their economic interests. So we're only talking about one aspect of holiness today, and at some point we have to talk about the personal aspect is more important, but I thought it'd be interesting to focus on communal and its implications in society as terms of anti-Semitism. Sai.
Do you think that that holiness is applicable to all religions?
That's a really good question. In religious
The
studies,
answers I'm looking for, that's a good question.
I mean, I would say that some religions, many religions would have this as a central concept, but not necessarily all religions. And of course, we've already talked today that holiness is at least two different definitions, which are very, very different from one another. So you'd first have to define it. But no, I don't think all religions have a concept of holiness. No. But I could be wrong. Other comments? Well, so nobody's going for my idea that the best way to preserve Reform Judaism for the next generation is to build an isolated community in the Arizona desert, say 100 miles west of here.
If we build it, will they come?
Well, we're going to pre-sell houses, so we'll have the money up front. So can I count on all of you to buy houses out there?
Will there be Wi-Fi?
We're limiting Wi-Fi. There'll be a censored Wi-Fi. You can only see certain web pages.
I want a Walmart nearby.
No Walmart.
Oh, then I'm not coming.
The Indian communities do not allow Walmart.
That's true.
Northern Arizona, there's no of these massive supermarkets in any of those towns.
But Donna.
When you say you might be wrong, are you of the saying that I may never be right? I may not be right, but I'm never wrong.
Well, I really know very little about the Eastern religions. And so I'm thinking of Hinduism and, Buddhism. I guess it'll end up, what do we define holiness as? I mean, I think almost all religions want their followers to be good people. But the question is, and good people is what holiness is, but so it's a hard question. It's a really hard question. It's the sort of thing you do a graduate seminar on for a semester, and then you have 15 graduate students all have to figure it out. And by the end of the semester, you hopefully have some consensus. But we don't have that kind of time or energy around here. All right, I'll turn it back to Steve for the final blessing.
Before I start that, Richard, you have one more comment?
Just want to say that, I've been mulling over what Minya said about how holiness is inside of you, is personal. I think she's absolutely right. That and the fact that ethical thoughts, morality are all inside of us. I think that's what's important. And so I just wanted to make a comment on that.
but also too, we also pray as a community,
Right.
and we want to be a community of holiness. So, all right. Any other comments, Rabbi? Any other announcements that you have? No? All right, let's conclude then with the blessing. Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Adonai,
Eloheinu
melech haolam,
Share
asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chaye olam naftav b'tokenu. Baruch atah Adonai, notei ha-Torah. Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us the teaching of
searching of
truth
truth,
and planted within us eternal life. Blessed is
Adonai, giver of
giver
Torah.
of the Torah. Amen. All right, everyone, have a good rest of the week and hopefully see you Friday night.
See you tomorrow.
Wait, by the way, there is a potluck
Friday.
Well,
Friday night.
come because there's going to be a potluck. I'm
Potluck.
bringing. Yeah,
Yes,
potluck.
we'll have brisket and roasted potatoes and simmus, all leftover from Passover, and it's going to be ideal.
I'm bringing some fruit.
Okay, perfect.
And I talked my friend Meredith to come in. She's going to bring some great chocolate cookies, she said.
Ooh.
Okay, then.
So she usually doesn't come to these things. And I talked her into it. Oh, you got to come.
Good.
Which
And Rabbi,
Meredith?
it starts at 5:30.
Okay. All right.
He didn't get my joke.
I'll probably be late.
It's an inside joke. Take care, everyone. Have us a good rest of the week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well.